Welcome back to Gordy's Magical Advent Calendar podcast. It is December 11th, which means another adventure with Gordy. Last time, Gordy made a friend from the South Pole. Let's see what the Magical Advent Calendar has in store today. Gordy had so much fun yesterday meeting Nori, the South Pole elf. He was getting ready to go out when he heard the familiar sound of the Advent Calendar buzz to life, and the 11 began to glow.
Hey, Santa.
Ho, ho, ho! Hello, Gordy. Today's special task is to show Nori around our village. I've heard she's especially excited to see our Christmas tree. Have fun!
Woohoo!
Gordy couldn't wait to go see his friend, and the Christmas tree was the one he picked out. He hoped she'd love it as much as he did. He grabbed a bit of tinsel so Nori could put it on the tree, and then he headed out towards the center of town. As Gordy approached Santa's village, he could see the big Christmas tree with its shiny star up in the distance. Nori was standing at the bottom, staring up in awe.
Hi, Gordy. This tree is awesome.
Thanks, Nori. My favorite part has always been the star. Look at it shine.
As they both looked up at the star in wonder, Gordy thought about how amazing it was. But then, something strange started to happen. The tree started to shake at the top. Suddenly, the penguin with the pink goggles burst out from the top of the tree, right next to the star.
Hey, what are you doing? Leave that star alone.
The penguin ignored Gordy. Suddenly, a magic beam shot from the penguin's pink goggles straight onto the yellow star. The star glowed bright pink, and with a cheeky wink, the penguin jumped on top of it.
Remember this as the day that Huey the Penguin finally won against Santa.
No!
Then he shot off, riding the shooting star, leaving a trail of pink starlight behind it.
What are we going to do?
We gotta go after it.
Gordy knew he wouldn't be fast enough on his candy cane skis, and he also had Nori with him. He didn't know what to do. Why would anyone want to steal a star and gingerbread from Santa?
Gingerbread, that's it.
Gordy let out a sharp whistle. Almost immediately, the gingerbread sleigh Gordy's mother made came barreling down the hill. Gordy and Nori hopped into the sleigh.
After that penguin.
The sleigh magically launched itself across the snow, chasing after the pink starlight. Within a few minutes, the sleigh had almost caught up to Huey, but he and the star were up in the sky. Gordy looked around for something he could use to get up there, but there was nothing but pine trees.
Oh, tinsel, we can't reach them.
We can use the tinsel.
Nori gave Gordy a confused look, but Gordy knew he had to get the penguin away from the star. It was the only way to stop the penguin's pink magic, so the star could go back to normal.
Nori, I was going to give you this to decorate the tree, but I'm going to have to use it for something else.
Gordy pulled out the tinsel he had brought for Nori. Then he gave her the magical reins, and she began to drive the sleigh through the snow.
This is awesome.
Gordy tied a knot in the tinsel, and then he began to swing it over his head like a lasso. He asked Nori to speed up, and she was more than happy to. Gordy flung the tinsel lasso like a cowboy, and it flew through the sky. It missed the penguin's foot, but snagged on the bottom of the star. Gordy tugged, and Huey looked down at him.
Ah! What are you doing?
Saving Christmas!
Gordy yoinked the tinsel lasso. The star flew towards Gordy. Huey fell off and landed on top of a pine tree.
Ouch!
As Gordy pulled the star back towards him, the pink magic flickered, then disappeared. The spell was broken!
We did it!
The North Pole is so fun.
Gordy pulled the star in, and it immediately started to fly back to where it belonged, the Christmas tree. Gordy looked back to where Huey landed and saw he was gone. They had returned the star, and Gordy showed Nori the rest of Santa's village. After Nori got to place the tinsel on the tree, of course. If you want to see and hear more about Gordy, check him out on YouTube. Also, tune in tomorrow for Gordy's next Magical Advent Calendar adventure. Welcome back to Gordy's Magical Advent Calendar podcast. It is December 12th, which means another adventure with Gordy. Yesterday, Gordy recovered the star for the Christmas tree. Let's see what the Magical Advent Calendar has in store today. Gordy was about to go out skiing when he heard the magical sound of the Advent Calendar and saw the 12 begin to glow.
Hi, Santa!
Ho, ho, ho! Hello, Gordy! Today is the hot cocoa competition, and we would love for you to join. One of our usual elves is sick, so we need someone to fill in. The winning cocoa will be the one I drink on Christmas night. Good luck!
Sweet candy canes!
Gordy was so excited about the perfect cup of cocoa. He ran over to the cupboard and threw it open. Gordy ruffled through and found a small piece of paper. Just what he was looking for.
Here it is!
Unfolding the paper, he saw that it was the map to the Hot Cocoa Rapids. His mom always talked about the rapids, and Gordy always wanted to go. It could help him win the hot cocoa competition. Gordy quickly grabbed his thermos and his candy cane skis, and he was off. Gordy raced down the snowy slopes, following the map.
I've got to be getting close to the rapids.
The icy ground beneath him was starting to turn to slush, and Gordy saw steam up ahead, but he couldn't stop in time.
Whoa!
Gordy slid along wildly, completely out of control. Up ahead, he could see that the steam was coming from the hot cocoa rapids. It was melting the snow!
Gotta brake!
Gordy tried to stop from sliding by crossing his skis, but was instead launched into the air. Gordy landed in the rapids with a big splash. The cocoa tasted amazing. It was easily the best hot cocoa Gordy ever had. The water bubbled around him like a hot tub, and it was very warm. He couldn't stay in here for too long, so he swam to the side and pulled himself out of the rapids.
Now, I just need to collect a little bit for the cocoa competition.
Gordy grabbed out his thermos and crouched next to the river. He carefully put the thermos into the rapids and got just the right amount of cocoa in there. Satisfied, he screwed the lid back on.
Woohoo!
But as Gordy celebrated, the snow under him started to melt and his foot slipped. Gordy's hands flew into the air, accidentally sending the thermos flying straight into the rapids.
My cocoa!
The thermos floated downstream. Gordy needed to get it back, but knew the rapids would be too hot to swim in for long. What could he do? Gordy looked around and saw his candy cane skis and a candy cane tree nearby.
Candy canes! That'll do it!
Gordy used candy canes from the tree and his skis and bound them together to create a candy cane river raft. He plopped it in the water and then jumped on. The raft shot forward and Gordy tried to hold on. Up ahead, Gordy could see his thermos bobbing along, but it was heading straight towards a hot cocoa waterfall. Gordy used his hands to paddle the raft quicker. Soon he caught up and grabbed his thermos. But now, the raft was heading straight for the waterfall's edge. Gordy looked down at his raft. The bottom candy canes were slowly melting in the hot cocoa. He had an idea! Gordy was able to use the melted bits of candy cane to bend the raft. He pulled his candy cane skis from it and started to use them as oars. Gordy tried to steer himself towards the snowbanks rather than over the waterfall. But as Gordy steered himself towards the snowbanks, the bottom of the raft melted through fully, and cocoa was splashing up. He was almost at the waterfall. He'd have to abandon ship. Gordy tucked the thermos away, grabbed both his candy cane skis and used all his might to jump. Gordy's candy canes hooked into the ground, and Gordy pulled himself up out of the rapids. The melting raft flew down the waterfall, disappearing in a chocolatey mist. After that river adventure, Gordy made his way back to the North Pole just in time for the competition. He added some of his melted candy canes to his cocoa and gave it a big shake. Then he brought his thermos to the center of town, where Mrs. Claus was judging the hot cocoa. Mrs. Claus took a sip from Gordy's thermos, then smiled widely.
This cocoa tastes like adventure, and is that candy cane? I love it. I think we have a winner.
All the elves cheered, and Gordy was happy Santa himself would be drinking the cocoa he brought. If you want to see and hear more about Gordy, check him out on YouTube. Also, tune in tomorrow for Gordy's next Magical Advent Calendar adventure. Welcome back to Gordy's Magical Advent Calendar podcast. It's December 13th, and Gordy is still thinking about yesterday's hot cocoa river rapids. Let's see what new adventure awaits him today. Gordy was cozying up on the couch with a blanket as he knitted himself a big Christmas stocking when he heard the magical advent calendar chime. The number 13 glowed, and Gordy left his warm cocoon to rush and open it.
Ho, ho, ho! Hello, Gordy! I need your help once again. The polar bears are supposed to be hibernating, but they refuse to sleep. You need to get them to sleep so they can be rested for the summer.
You got it, Santa.
This seemed like an easy mission for Gordy. Sleeping is fun and healthy. Of course, he could get some polar bears to take a nap. He strapped on his candy cane skis and set off to the polar bear caves. Gordy knew these caves well, since he used to play with baby polar bears when he was an even younger elf, diving in and out of the intricate cave system. On normal winters, dozens of polar bear families hibernated in those caves, but as Gordy made his way in, he saw it was packed full of sleepless bears.
Jolly morning, furry friends.
Gordy recognized Polly, the ice skating bear, as well as some of the younger bears he had played with when he was younger. He approached one of them, Coda, who was rolling around playing with a snowball.
Coda! What's going on? Why don't you and your family want to sleep?
Coda told Gordy that they're just not tired. There's so many fun games to play, so they don't want to stop playing. Besides, now that Gordy was there, the real fun could begin.
Come play snow tag with us.
Gordy knew his mission was to get the bears to sleep, but this sounded so fun. And maybe playing would tire them out, right? Coda tossed a snowball to Gordy and dashed away into the caves, followed by his two siblings. It was now a game of snow tag, and how could Gordy resist? Gordy ran after the bears, laughing as he made more snowballs and tossed them at Coda. The two young friends ran all over the polar bear caves, tagging each other with snowballs and having a blast. As Gordy played, he began to look around. There was something sad about them. No fun colors anywhere and nothing on the walls. Everything was made of hard rocks, and there was nothing soft for the bears to rest on. Then Gordy remembered how nice and warm his house was, with blankets and pillows.
That's it! I'll just have to make this the coziest cave ever!
Now, Gordy just needed to get Coda and the other bears to help. At first, Coda just wanted to keep playing, but Gordy promised him that his idea would be just as fun.
I guess we can try.
Gordy zipped back to his house and grabbed all the knitting equipment he could carry, plopping it onto his gingerbread sleigh and pushing it back to the caves. When he returned, he saw that Coda had gathered the other bears into the main cave so they could all listen to Gordy's idea.
I know a way we can have fun while making this cave the coziest, most perfect nap corner in all the land.
With an exaggerated gesture, Gordy tossed each bear a ball of yarn. They grabbed the yarn with their large bare hands, but looked at it in confusion.
Grab a thread and let's do this.
Gordy held onto a thread of yarn and then grabbed a snowball. He tossed it at Coda, then dashed away through the cave's tunnels, unwinding the yarn as he ran. Coda laughed and followed him, also holding onto a thread of yarn.
Come on, everyone.
The other bears joined too, all running around playing snow tag, crisscrossing their yarn as they made their way through the tunnels. It was as if they were knitting while they played. Gordy giggled excitedly as he and the bears continued to wind the yarn all over, around rocks and under branches, creating a huge blanket. The cave had never been more cozy and colorful.
Everybody, keep going. You're doing it.
By the end, the cave was no longer empty and cold, but rather it was filled with warm, colorful blankets. The bears were all starting to get sleepy after all that running around, and it was easy for them to fall onto their new, super soft beds. Gordy smiled, proud, and got ready to head out.
But wait, can you tell us a bedtime story before you go?
Of course he could. Coda tossed him a book, and Gordy began to read it.
Once upon a time.
Gordy told the story of the 3 young bears and a little blonde girl that wouldn't stop stealing their food and beds. All the bears listened closely. It was, after all, their favorite book. Soon their eyes felt heavy, and they were so warm and cozy, they couldn't help but fall asleep.
I did it.
As quietly as possible, Gordy tiptoed his way out of the caves. He was so happy to have helped his bear friends and couldn't wait to go home and finish his own stocking. If you want to see and hear more about Gordy, check him out on YouTube. Also, tune in tomorrow for Gordy's next Magical Advent Calendar adventure. Welcome back to Gordy's Magical Advent Calendar podcast. It is December 14th, which means another adventure with Gordy. Yesterday, Gordy made the polar bear's home super cozy. Let's see what the Magical Advent Calendar has in store today. Gordy was about to eat a gingerbread cookie when he heard the magical sound of the Advent Calendar and saw the 14 start to glow.
Hi, Santa.
Ho, ho, ho! Hello, Gordy. We have an issue at the wishing well where the letters from children around the world are kept. There might be an intruder there. Can you go check? Good luck.
Gordy finished eating his cookie and then hurriedly left his cabin. The wishing well was off to the side of Santa's workshop. It led down to various underground passages that held all the letters from kids around the world. When they sent a letter to Santa asking for presents, this is where they went. If someone was there, they might accidentally open one, and the wish could come to life. Gordy knew he had to fix this. Gordy looked down the well and couldn't see anything besides a bright blue glow. Without hesitating, he jumped down. Gordy flew down the well. It felt like the ultimate slide. After a minute, he was at the bottom of the cave system. He could see magical tubes running throughout the tunnels. Letters shot down them in different directions.
How neat.
Gordy then saw a few tinsel trolls working near the tubes. Gordy asked them if they knew about an intruder, but they didn't. He walked further down the tunnel towards a large pile of letters, and then he found a familiar face.
Huey the Penguin?
Standing on top of a pile of letters was indeed Huey the Penguin. He was wearing his usual pink goggles and had an open letter in his hand.
You again?
Put that letter back. It's not yours.
But with these wishes, I can make something truly magical.
Before Gordy could stop him, Huey then opened 2 other letters.
This one wishes for a tiger. This one wishes for a robot. This one wishes for a dragon. What happens if you mash them all together?
No, don't!
But it was too late. Huey put the 3 letters together, and then pink magic shot out from his goggles. There was a great puff of pink smoke, and then, as it disappeared, Gordy saw what the wishes had created. It was a robot tiger with dragon wings, and Huey was sitting on its back. The 3 letters floated down to the ground.
This is the greatest creation ever!
Huey and the robot tiger dragon then flew off down the tunnel. Gordy knew he couldn't let them escape. He picked up the discarded letters. If he could touch the letters to the robot tiger dragon, the wishes would return to the paper. He ran off after Huey. The tunnels were very long. Gordy had trouble finding Huey at first, but then he heard a roar from further on.
There you are.
Gordy ran with all of his might and turned a corner to find Huey at the end of a tunnel. Next to Gordy was the entrance to one of the tubes.
Give that robot tiger dragon back!
Never!
Huey and the robot tiger dragon then sped off. There was no way Gordy could catch up to them on foot. He looked around and had an idea.
The tubes!
Gordy lifted the hatch to the tube and was instantly pulled in by the wind.
Whoa!
Gordy was sliding along in the tube at super speed. So fast, in fact, that he passed Huey and the robot tiger dragon. But that was okay because the tube was shooting him straight up, the same direction they were trying to escape to. Gordy felt the wind blow behind him as he was launched straight up the wishing well. He landed softly on the snow just outside the wishing well. Then he hid in a snowy bush. A few minutes later, Huey and the robot tiger dragon climbed out of the wishing well too. Gordy waited for the perfect moment and then he jumped.
Yeah!
Gordy touched the letters to the robot tiger dragon and a magical green and red glow swept around them. The wishes were back in the letters! Gordy sealed them and put them in his pocket.
You ruined my wishes!
Those weren't your wishes.
Huey huffed, and then he ran off. Gordy jumped back down the wishing well and returned the wishes to their proper place. After that, he thought about what his Christmas wish would be. If you want to see and hear more about Gordy, check him out on YouTube. Also, tune in tomorrow for Gordy's next Magical Advent Calendar adventure. Welcome back to Gordy's Magical Advent Calendar podcast. It's December 15th, and Gordy is a bit tired from yesterday's adventure in the magical wishing well. Let's see what's in store for him today. Gordy was sitting by his cozy fireplace, sipping on a cup of peppermint tea, when he heard the familiar chime of the magical advent calendar. The number 15 glowed brightly, and Gordy rushed to open the little door.
Ho, ho, ho! Hello, Gordy. I need your help. Mrs. Claus was baking gingerbread cookies for the Christmas feast, but something went wrong. Could you lend her a hand?
Of course, Santa.
Gordy headed straight to Mrs. Claus's kitchen, and even before he arrived, he could already smell the familiar sweet, spicy scent of freshly baked gingerbread. But he could also hear something less familiar. As Gordy pushed open the door, he encountered something he'd never seen before. Gingerbread men running around wildly, knocking over everything on their path. The kitchen was a crazy mess, clouds of flour covering the air and dough splattered everywhere. The gingerbread men stopped as they saw Gordy, blinking their frosting eyes and wiggling their icing-covered arms at Mrs. Claus, who stood frozen in the chaos.
What in the jingle bells? Mrs. Claus, the gingerbread men are alive!
Oh, Gordy, my dear. I must have used too much magic in the recipe. Now look at my kitchen. We have to stop them before they turn the entire North Pole upside down.
Hearing this, the gingerbread men went back to their mayhem, toppling baking sheets as they dashed across the kitchen, spilling sugar and spice everywhere. One of them even leaped into the frosting bowl, painting itself in bright colors.
I'll grab the frosting bag. Can you grab the spatula, Mrs. Claus?
With their tools in hand, Gordy and Mrs. Claus tried to round up the runaway gingerbread men. One by one, the little cookie troublemakers scurried around the room, dodging and laughing. Gordy finally cornered the colorful frosting one and carefully aimed his own frosting bag.
Gotcha! No more running for you!
Gordy squeezed a dollop of frosting, sticking the gingerbread man to the counter. Mrs. Claus managed to scoop another one up with her spatula and place it safely in a cookie tin. As the lid closed, the magical spell seemed to wear off and the cookies turned back to normal.
2 down. So many more to go.
Gordy and Mrs. Claus high-fived, but Gordy noticed one of the gingerbread men rushing by past them.
Quick, it's heading for the door. We can't let them escape.
The other gingerbread men joined the first, all in a mad dash to break out of the kitchen. But Gordy had a plan. He turned to Mrs. Claus with a confident smile on his face.
Ma'am, I think we're going to need your incredible fast frosting skills for this one.
She chuckled, flattered. She was the fastest baker in all of the North Pole, and it was always fun to be reminded. Gordy handed her the frosting bag. They both knew what to do. With a quick hand, Gordy grabbed a jar of sprinkles and scattered them across the counter like a trail of breadcrumbs. The gingerbread men heard the sound of sprinkles and slowed down.
Come on, little guys. Don't you want a snack before you go?
One by one, the gingerbread men couldn't resist and followed the trail. Little did they know, Mrs. Claus was creating a huge layer of frosting at the end of the sprinkles trail, and the gingerbread men fell right into the frosting-covered trap.
Nice!
Gordy and Mrs. Claus quickly peeled them off the frosting and secured them in a tin. They looked around, and it seemed like all the cookies were gathered. But then,
Look over there!
Mrs. Claus followed Gordy's stare to a trail of flower footprints, leading all the way to an open window. Oh no! Had one of the cookies escaped? Gordy looked out the window and saw the small baked man rushing towards Santa's reindeer barn, leaving little clouds of flour in his wake. He was rather fast for a gingerbread man.
Hey you, come back!
The gingerbread man looked back at Gordy and blew a raspberry. How cheeky! But as he turned around, he got distracted and didn't see Cinnamon the reindeer curiously approach. Cinnamon delicately grabbed the gingerbread man with her mouth and pranced back to Gordy, delivering the cookie safe and sound.
Thanks, Cinnamon. You're the best.
Gordy handed the last gingerbread man to Mrs. Claus, and she secured it in the cookie tin.
Phew, that was close. Thank you, Gordy. I think I'll stick to regular flour next time.
With the gingerbread men safely tucked away, Mrs. Claus cleaned up the mess and offered Gordy a fresh batch of non-magical cookies to snack on. With their baking adventure behind them, Gordy waved goodbye to Mrs. Claus and headed back to his home. These cookies would taste perfect with his peppermint tea. If you want to see and hear more about Gordy, check him out on YouTube. Also, tune in tomorrow for Gordy's next magical Advent calendar adventure.